What have you learned? You're getting dads together. What are dads telling you? What do they need?
Yeah, I think at first I just really wanted community myself. So I think I took it more of like me learning about fatherhood. And I think what I've learned from the dads is that we're all in a similar process. And I think it's been really cool to embrace that vulnerability of like, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, figuring this out day by day. And I think what dads are communicating now is they're feeling empowered of the community. It's theirs. And I think the ownership is really cool because I think dads need something to kind of take ownership of. And I think if you can take ownership of your family, you have a group that's empowering you, I think we can change the course of fatherhood for generations. You know, my hope is to impact my son. So that's the goal for sure.
What do guys tell you? Because one of the things we hear all the time is like men are facing this like crisis of isolation. They have no friends anymore. The only place I hang out is with people on Fortnite.
Yeah. I think at first I thought like it was a little bit of a mix. Like I would have dads reach out and moms would sign their like the husbands up. Moms would sign their husbands up. And I was like, okay, but as it's grown, like I've found such a number of dads and men who are like, I want community. I want people who look like me, talk like me, have differences, have different interests, you know, things like that. And I think you would be surprised how many men don't know what's out there and just are looking for something and want to be a part of something. And I think fatherhood kind of, it evens the playing field for everyone. It doesn't matter what you do for a living. It doesn't matter what I do. We're raising a child and we can relate to that. And I think there's so much similarities in that, whether you're interested in anime or shoes, it's like, I'm raising a child. We're both in the same place. So how can we encourage each other through it? Priority for us is to create a safe space, first off, and then a space that people want to be a part of. I'm not cool. Like, I'm just a dad. Like, I'm not trying to be whatever. Like, I'm not trying to be this persona or who I was or what I did. I'm really just trying to embrace that. And I don't care who comes as long as you're a father who is involved, you know, and wants to be a part of their child's life and wants to invest. I think that's the most important thing for us.
Thank you for your leadership on this. It means lots of.
Thank you so much, bro.
One of the things you shared about Movember that I thought was extraordinarily powerful was the creation of an accessible entry point. At Dads for All, we talk a lot about that. How do you create a space that men and dads specifically want to join?
And I mean, starting from the entry point of engaging guys as dads, bringing them in around that, like trusting that men raising kids really want, especially in the current generation, more so than even our dads and grandparents' generation, really tie their identity to being great dads. I feel like that resonates across the political spectrum. Right? So like we're at this event today where so many people are working on thornier, tough topics around pursuing equality in care work issues or even, you know, rethinking definitions of masculinity. Some of those are pretty tough entry points for conversation. I'm not saying there is nobody who's ready for that. There are people on their journey who are going to be ready for that. For dads, I think just engaging around practically, what are your challenges this week? What are you running into? How can you find that balance of articulating what you need, what your kid needs, what your co-parent scenario needs? Just getting into the practicalities. What's the kid into and what are the challenges this week or what's been great this week? What's a breakthrough? I always ask other parents, like, what's your kid into? I think on stage, I was also trying to encourage people to really imagine a definition of flourishing family that's not just about solving problems.
Mundo just asked a lot of questions of hundreds, thousands of men around the country to understand where they're coming from. Talk to me about the few big things you learned from theirs.
Yeah, thank you. Absolutely. We actually surveyed 2,500 people, of which 1,900 were men and about 600 were women. And we also had 1,500 caregivers. So we really did want to look at sort of people with children and people without children and to understand some of their experiences more deeply. It's across the country, nationally representative. A few things really stood out. One of them is that men who have children report higher sense of purpose in life than men without children, almost 1.3 times. And I think that's such a powerful finding because we are always placing caregiving as a burden. And in fact, it's not. In fact, it gives people a lot of joy. And we've done this work globally as well. And that's what we found is that people actually find caregiving more enjoyable than exhausting. So we need to reframe that a little bit. And the other thing that came up was, yes, they find a sense of purpose, but the world as it's currently set up is not serving women, men, people of any gender, and certainly not serving caregivers. So economic anxiety, things like home ownership, things like jobs are not giving me status or reputation, things like it was easier for my grandfather to buy a house than me. All these things that are anxiety, that are about the possibility of a secure future are deeply embedded and prevalent across all ethnic groups, all age groups, men, women, people with children and not, right? And we're also finding that what happens with caregivers is that actually those fears and those economic anxieties get exacerbated, right? So they're actually, men and women are both willing to give up jobs or whatever they need to do in order to be able to take care of the children, but they also have these very deep-seated economic anxieties. So what do we do, right, about those? And at the end of the day, we start thinking about, okay, where are they? Because we're in a political moment right now. That's really hard for a lot of people. And it probably serves a lot of people too. So where do the caregivers fall in all that? And I think what we're finding, we did interviews with 32 dads, again, all over the US, Kansas, Raleigh, Oakland, and more. And here's what came out. Fathers don't actually care so much about who's in office. What they care about is whether or not they are going to be able to provide for their kids. They can protect their kids. There's an online world that they're terrified about. They don't actually know how to support their kids and the way in which they're engaging with technology. That's what bothers them. That's what they're actually worried about. They want resources more at local and state level rather than at central level, right? And they said that we've got quotes that are saying, if something is working in Arizona, let's focus on that. Or at the state level, right? Let's get away from these sort of political pieces around, oh, we'll get rid of the Department of Education. The other thing that we found, not just in this survey, but in many, is that, you know what? They are willing to vote for policies around care.
Yeah.
So we have almost, I think, 2/3 of the sample that says, I would vote for childcare policies, subsidies. I would vote for child tax credits. I would vote for paid care leave policies. So if they're willing to vote for it, why aren't we putting them
putting it on the table? I mean, this is what happens when you have generational changes in gender dynamics so quickly, right? Caitlin Collins, a sociologist, basically says you've had 2 generations of like every woman has entered the workforce, and like men are doing. And look, like we're not there yet.
Yeah.
We have work to do as a group to like catch up. And that is not a revolution that's being visited on Democratic households, Republican households, or it's every.
Yes, it is.
And I think once we grasp that, we might make some progress.
And I think what's really interesting is I'll talk to you a little bit about paid leave for a minute, because that's you think it's an easy low-hanging fruit, right? And we should be able to implement paid leave across the country. And where it has worked, because we do this work globally as well, that it needs to be, one, non-transferable, right? So if you make it transferable, guess what? Moms are going to take it.
That's right.
Why is paid leave important? Dads take paid leave. They automatically begin to make that bond with their newborn child or with their adopted child. Right. And that ultimately helps the family thrive. The mom, the child, and the dad. The dad's mental health goes up when they get to spend time with their newborn or their, newly adopted child. When the paid leave is not fully paid, what happens in most of the generous paid leaves in the world as well is that they start becoming like 80% after a certain amount of time, right? So they cap out. You can't expect households to cap out. You can't expect households to live on 80%.
It doesn't work. It's not the way households work.
And I just told you about the economic anxiety that's like deep-seated and like running across all age groups. So then you also have a gender pay gap. So when you have women with a gender pay gap who are actually earning less, and then you have fathers who are earning more, who's going to take that? So it's actually a lot more complicated. It's a trap. So what you were talking about the care gap, which is that men are not fully stepped into their caregiving roles the way we would like them to. They're definitely doing more than they have done in any generation before. We know that. Yet there are so many confounding factors that are prohibit. But that's what it is that, there's actually a confluence of factors that we need to look into that is making it harder and harder for men to be caregivers.
I mean, I have friends who work in the financial industry, forgive me, who will be bullied for taking leave. Literally, I'm not saying bullied.
Yes, 100%.
And that's not unusual.
So if your manager is going to hold taking leave against you, you're never going to take leave, right? If you're scared that you're going to take leave and you're not going to be promoted because you took leave, you're never going to take leave. So it doesn't even matter about the policy. It's the culture. We have studies and we have data showing this in the Nordics. The most generous leave policies in the world are in the Nordics. And yet we don't have 100% uptake of paid leave by men there, right? And it's for precisely all these reasons. Workplace culture matters. Social norms matter. Having a system set in place that actually supports caregivers matters. So the world as it's set up, I'm going to come back to this, is we can do better. The way it's set up currently is not serving anybody.
That's why we're grateful to have Equimundo and others working on systemic change and not nibbling at the edges. like going to the center of it. And so we're grateful for you and thank you for having us.
Thank you. Really appreciate it.
Great. You were talking about caregiving. So millennial men. So from what I understand, we're doing like 3x more than our fathers, but they were doing like an hour a week, maybe. So it's maybe a low bar, easily cleared or something like that. I'm trying to understand this. Like, what are we doing relative to the generation before?
I think more men are finding purpose in caregiving. I think it used to be that men's purpose was to go to work, to provide for the family, to be the breadwinners. So a lot of this has to do with that women are ascending to new positions in leadership. They're taking on employment roles. That's getting permission from men, I think, to step into caregiving a little bit more, which is such a revolution. It's such an important thing. Taking my dad, for example, he was a professor. He would come back from teaching and he would expect there to be food on the table, right? And he was progressive, right? He was a political science professor. I never saw my dad vacuum. I never saw my dad change a diaper. I saw him do certain tasks. He would grill the meat, right? He would wash, he would wash the dishes at the end of the day. And then he would say, kitchen's closed.
Things we've talked about is this provide and protect thing you mentioned, which is so canonical, so central to the masculine identity. But one of the things we talk about at Dads for All is what if you applied that to the community?
Yeah. So take my small town in Kent. A lot of the volunteer opportunities, for example, are done by women. There's running for office. Increasingly, women are running for office. Men are stepping back from that. They're not seeing a lot of value in it. Men are stepping back from leadership positions. And what we're seeing in my little small town is that you really need to listen to men, what men are experiencing. Mental health stress among men is significant right now. I had a friend of mine tell me we were starting a men's group in Old Town. He said, I wish I was an alcoholic so I could join Alcoholics Anonymous, right? So men are like not learning how to join civic institutions. And I think that's really challenging, our ability to organize and to mobilize.